twins, Sam and Robbie, are 6 years old. A year ago, we had to move from our old house because of a really bad experience. I had been living there for 4 years, got married to Carol, and we had our kids there. The neighborhood was going downhill, but we still thought we'd stay there for a long time until things got weird. Our house was on a corner, and the house behind us was hidden by trees and bushes, so we never really saw those neighbors. Our next-door neighbor, Steve, had moved in less than a year before all this happened. We didn't talk much because of his thick accent, and he seemed unfriendly. 2 of his windows overlooked our backyard, but the lights in those rooms were always off, so I figured they were unused. One summer day, Sam and Robbie were playing in the backyard with their blow-up pool and water guns while I did yard work. I saw Steve at his window for a split second before he walked away. It was odd, but I shrugged it off. Later, when the kids were back in the pool, their laughter stopped. Robbie came inside and said he saw a flashing light from Steve's window. I followed him out and he pointed to the window. Both kids thought it looked like a camera flash. I brought them inside and told Carol. She was as worried as I was and suggested I confront Steve. I knocked on his door, but he didn't answer, even though his car was there. This made us even more suspicious. Weeks later, Carol and I heard our side gate quietly open and close one night. I went outside to check and saw the lights on in Steve's backyard. When I looked over the fence, Steve popped up and asked if I needed something. I asked if he'd seen anyone sneaking around. He said no, and I bluntly asked if he'd been watching our kids and taking pictures. He got really defensive, almost yelling. Without proof, I couldn't do much, so I apologized and went back inside. Carol was convinced he was lying. The final straw came a few weeks later, in the middle of the night. Carol woke me up in a panic because the kids were screaming. I rushed to their room, and Robbie said he saw someone outside the window with a camera flash. I brought the kids to our room, peeked out the window, and saw Steve peeking out of his window. Furious, I rang his doorbell a bunch of times, but he didn't answer. I reported him to the police, hoping they'd keep an eye on him if others complained too. After that, Steve avoided going outside when I was around. We moved to a new house in a nearby town within a month. It's been a much better place for raising the kids. A few months ago, I moved into an apartment with 2 other women so I could attend college. The building has its downsides, like how most apartment rooms face the corridor, so people walking by can see right into your room if you keep your windows open. But since I'm mostly at college and my roommates and neighbors are nice, these things don't really bother me. A few nights ago, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard music playing somewhere. It was mostly pop songs from the 2000s. Living in a student-friendly city full of frat houses, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just some party or some drunk friends playing music in the street. I got into bed, let a random video play on my phone to help me fall asleep, and started to doze off. Then I heard drilling noises. I thought maybe I was just sleepy and imagining things, or maybe it was coming from my phone. But when I paused the video, I realized it was definitely a drill nearby. I walked around the apartment, confused. It was around 11 p.m., so it was odd for someone to be working. The sound was louder at my bedroom window, so I opened it and realized it was coming from the neighboring apartment, which is the closest to my window. The music was also coming from there. No one lives in that apartment, so my confusion grew. I figured maybe someone had rented it and the landlord ordered something to be fixed. Still, it was strange for them to be working so late on a Thursday. I tried to sleep, but the noise didn't stop. I was texting a friend and complaining about it, even sending audio and a video directed at the window where the noise was coming from. My friend suggested calling the police, but I decided against it because I just wanted to sleep. It was past midnight by then. I forced myself to sleep through the drilling sounds, but around 1 a.m., I woke up again to hammering. Feeling stressed but not enough to take action, I tried to sleep once more. I woke up again, fed up, and put on a robe to confront whoever it was. The window to the apartment was open, so I decided to talk to the people from there. The window was located above the stairs, so I had to go down a few steps to get into view. As soon as I got to the window, I felt my courage leave me. There were 4 men around their 30s or 40s, and they all stopped what they were doing to look at me. The only sound was the music from the radio, and it felt chilling to have all the other noises stop so abruptly. None of them looked shocked to see me. They just had puzzled looks. Remembering why I was there, I said, "Excuse me, it's pretty late, and most people here have work early in the morning. If it's not too much to ask, can you guys do this some other time? I'm a pretty short 19-year-old, and I didn't even think to put on something other than a robe." Two of the men came to the window, towering over me, looking up and down at my body almost like predators. They were both sweaty, and one had a heavy hammer in his hand. They started smiling in a sick, twisted way, and I felt a sudden urge to throw up. Extremely unsettled, I slowly made my way back to my apartment, not taking my eyes off the men. Once I was out of their view, I dashed to my front door, got inside, and locked it. One of my roommates was out of town, and I presumed the other one was asleep since she hadn't seen my texts in our group chat asking if anyone had moved into that apartment. I got back into my room and didn't hear any tools again. Even the radio seemed to have been turned off. I wasn't sure how to feel about that because I wasn't angry anymore, just disgusted and creeped out. I know I should have called the cops, but I was too stressed to deal with it. Checking the time, it was about 2:15. I got into bed again, tricking myself into thinking I wasn't scared and just craving some sleep. Eventually, I passed out. I woke up again in the middle of the night, this time around 3:30. There were no sounds coming from the apartment. Everything was quiet. That quickly started to bother me. It was too quiet. I had to have heard or felt something to wake up. The silence made me uneasy, and I had a feeling someone might be on the other side of my closed window. I tried not to think about it, but couldn't get a peaceful sleep after that. The next morning, as I was going out, I noticed the window was closed as if the previous night had never happened. I asked my roommate if she heard anything, and she said she had woken up several times during the night but couldn't get up due to sleep paralysis. This confirmed I wasn't imagining things. Those people really were there. But how did they have the keys to the building and that apartment? Why didn't they want to be seen during the day? What were they thinking of doing to me or any passerby? It's been a week now, and thankfully I haven't seen those men again. Still, I have no idea who they were or what they were doing, and I'm scared they might come back or still be lurking around. So, I live in this pretty basic suburban town on Long Island, New York. My girlfriend Sarah and I recently started renting this small house, perfect for just the two of us. We have a decent-sized backyard, and the house is on a really quiet street. On one side, there's this water drainage basin, which is basically just a bunch of trees around a sump. On the other side, we have our neighbor Kyle and his wife. They're in their 60s and super quiet. Across the street, there's a little patch of woods in front of another water drainage basin. If you like privacy, our place is perfect. But then there's the backyard. Kyle's house is blocked off by some bushes the landlord planted years ago. So besides the house directly behind us over the fence, there's no other house that can see into the yard. However, that one house behind us is all it takes to make Sarah and me really uncomfortable. It's fall right now, and we've been doing some cleanup in the front and backyard. I started noticing that every time we were out there, these two people would stand at the upstairs window of the house behind us. It was this middle-aged man and woman. When I'd look up at the window, they'd keep staring. It got really uncomfortable and we started pretending not to notice it, but we could only do that for so long. The leaves kept falling, and the cleaning had to continue. Sarah didn't want to be in the yard anymore because those two people were creeping her out. One foggy day while I was raking, I looked up, and there they were again. I decided to wave at them to see if they'd wave back. I smiled and waved for a few seconds, but they didn't move at all. No reaction, just staring. I turned away and kept raking, but after sneaking a peek a few minutes later and seeing them still there, I felt too awkward to stay outside. I went inside. Sarah suggested we go introduce ourselves. At first, I wasn't sure, but she convinced me, so we walked around the block to their house and rang the bell. We expected one of the people from the window to answer, but instead, the door cracked open just enough to see half of a person's head. It wasn't either of the people from the window. It was super dark inside, and the guy looked a lot younger, like in his 20s. We tried to be friendly and introduce ourselves, but the guy seemed really closed off and uninterested in talking. He had this "what do you want" attitude. When I asked if he lived with anyone else like his parents, he said no. I mentioned the people we always saw at the window, and he acted like he didn't know what I was talking about. Sarah and I felt really unsettled, so we left. As we walked back to our house, I noticed the guy was still peeking through the cracked door, watching us walk away. That interaction was way creepier than we expected. Back home, I went upstairs to our bedroom. The upstairs is just our master bedroom and the bathroom. There's a window that looks over to that house. I looked out and saw those two people staring again. Even from a distance, it felt like they were looking right at me. I shut the blinds and told Sarah. We agreed it was time to plant some bushes to block their view, but it's fall and too late to plant anything. We'll have to wait until spring. After a few days of not looking outside or going into the backyard, one night we heard this weird knocking sound from downstairs. I told Sarah to stay in bed while I checked it out. The knocking got louder, and I realized it was coming from one of the backyard windows. The blinds were shut because we didn't want those creepy people looking in at night. I approached the window, and yep, it was definitely someone knocking on the glass. I thought about saying, "Who's there?" but I was too scared. Instead, I turned on the backyard light, and the knocking stopped. I didn't want to look out, so I kept the light on and went back upstairs, telling Sarah that I chased whoever it was away. I exaggerated because I didn't want to sound like a coward or make her worry. Nothing has happened since, but I'll keep you updated through the winter. Update. It's been 2 weeks, and we haven't seen those people at the window, but last night we heard yelling and screaming from that house. I opened our window and heard muffled yells coming from there. It was so loud we could hear it through 2 closed windows. Then, out of nowhere, it just stopped and went quiet. We almost called the police, but didn't. I'll update again if anything else happens, but we're really getting creeped out.